Restaurant Unstoppable. What the most successful restaurateurs know that you don't.
It's just crazy. There's no way to accurately explain to somebody what you are feeling on the inside. And you don't know if you want, like, there's a reason why people have a lot of partners in business, because those people help absorb that pressure.
Yeah.
But the truth is, even your partners are going through it. They're just more people.
But it's so much better. Like, what's the phrase? Misery loves company.
Well, misery does love company.
But at the same time, when you have other people to like go through it with, like you alluded to earlier, like people are there for you. You have that support. And when you're going it by yourself, it's lonely at the top. You have nobody that can relate to what you're going through. You need that support system. You need to be able to lean on somebody. When you're having a bad day, you need that partner to step up and kind of support you a little bit, and then you need to be there for them when they're having a bad day. I don't recommend anybody try to go into business completely by themselves if they're trying to do something truly great, because you need to be so many different things. Unless you're a freak of nature, and there's some freaks of nature out there, you won't have everything you need to do it right.
Well, I don't recommend anyone go into it by themselves either, but I think there's structures that allow you to have the support you need without physically having a lot of people in a full-on partnership role as it relates to fiscally.
Yeah.
And so, there are times when people make their attorneys their partners. There are times when people make their accountants their partners. I'm simply stating that may that's not always necessary. It depends on how your partner is contributing. And then what ruins partnerships is how long they will contribute. The engine always has to contribute. That's the weird thing about these kinds of processes.
The engine always has to contribute.
Yeah.
So what is the engine?
When you get in your car, there's an engine.
Yeah.
Every time you turn on the ignition,
the systems.
Right. It has to produce. It is the component that physically moves the vehicle. Okay? And so, in most restaurants, the chef, if you took a lesser restaurant, not lesser, but if you took a different format and there's a kitchen manager, that person is usually moving the vehicle.
The kitchen manager?
The kitchen manager, yeah. Kitchen manager, chef.
Yeah.
They're usually moving the vehicle. Kitchen managers are usually in roles where it's mostly fast casual. We all know what chefs do.
Yeah.
And so then there are all these supporting parts around it. And you got to ask yourself if the kitchen manager has to be there every morning to open that restaurant. In some cases, they're there until it closes. But let's just say it's a well-oiled machine, and the kitchen manager is the person who facilitates and makes sure that the food always both feels fresh and eats fresh. That there's a fresh take on the menu, that there is a fresh approach to how we handle, process, and deliver ingredients. And the chef is full of creativity and delivers you this full-on experience every time you're in the restaurant. That is what you expect as part of that brand. Do you expect the attorney to always litigate and or find issue, right? Do you expect the accountant, once they get their systems in place, to always have to spend the same amount of time on a particular part of your finances? At some point, some of these jobs should become more efficient, and they should deserve or require less time. It is very, very difficult for a chef to create a kitchen that's high performing that requires less time. If anything, chefs add more rigor to their job as they get better.
Always trying to improve.
Right, then they make the job more complicated.
More challenging.
And so if a chef is going to be an owner, then it's tough for someone to match that work. As beautiful as a car looks on the outside, you take the engine out of the vehicle, it's just a beautiful car sitting on the curb.
So are you suggesting that you don't make yourself the engine and you start by making somebody else the engine, so you can't be on it?
No, I'm the engine.
Okay.
I make sure that I have really great I have a really great supporting cast, and I don't try to put myself in a position where all things are equal, because they're not. At the end of the day, if this restaurant has to close tomorrow, God forbid, no one else's brand is going to take a dent.
Yeah.
But my own.
Yeah.
If the thing is hugely successful over the next 10 years, it will lift my brand. But I could have been in a position, which I'm not, but I could have been in a position where my supporting partners could have equal shares of a company where they don't have to do equal contributions on a day-to-day basis. And how would that make not my ego, but how would that make me feel when I'm contributing and recognizing that I'm working harder than everybody else, right? And their kids are benefiting, at the same level that my kid is benefiting, but my kid's the only one that's saying, Daddy, when are you going to ride my bike with me?
Yeah. So it sounds like
here.
What I'm hearing is that you think that the system as we know it, the way of doing business as we know it, is broken and not distributed equally.
It's not broken. It just needs to be balanced.
Okay.
There's a big difference between something being broken and something being tweaked. When your scale does not measure correctly, then you calibrate it. The system, as a chef, right? The system to me needs calibration, and the calibration is that chefs need to create more ownership space for themselves, period. And you're seeing this in sports, right? The contracts are getting larger and larger and larger for athletes. Some would say that the contracts are insane. However, we haven't heard about a game not being played, and Lord knows if it's ever happened. We've never heard. Actually, I'll venture to say we've never heard a playoff series not being played because the owner twisted his ankle right before the game.
Yeah.
Right? And the owner has very little chance of twisting his ankle or her ankle right before the game. Right? The game is not conducive to, nobody shows up to see the owner get out there and perform at the highest level. We expect our seats to be comfortable. We expect the ushers to be in place. There are a lot of things that we expect ownership to manage via the experience, but we're really showing up for the stars that are on the court.
Whereas in the restaurant industry, the owner is the star.
The owner reaps the benefits, the greatest benefit of the star.
Okay, so you're saying in the scenario where the owner isn't the chef, this is the scenario. But what you're saying is we need more scenarios where the owner is the chef.
Yes.
And how do we do that? How do we create that scenario where there is a better balance? How do we recalibrate this? What needs to happen?
There is no we in that calibration. Chefs have to take ownership of their space. We've got to get, what we have to do as a group is get out of the mindset of not understanding the profit and loss statement in restaurants, not understanding, how much rent where the owner is paying per square foot. Like, we all start somewhere, and you're on a rung on a ladder. But in order to truly get to the top of the ladder, I think ownership is part of that natural escalation.
So what has to start happening that hasn't been happening in the past to get there?
We got to seek out that information, and I think more chefs are seeking it out now.
Yeah.
As they're realizing that they're building brands that aren't built to sustain them. They're building brands that create intellectual property that the owner is the possessor of, not the person who is the creative, and they're getting a shorter end of the stick. And it's no fault of the owner. I think that the fault is ours when, after producing at a certain level over a period of time, that we're not seeking to get higher up the ladder. Like, I don't think that anyone should forego being a cook before they become a chef. I don't think that anyone should forego understanding the technical aspects of running and managing a kitchen before they get to the process of being acclaimed as a chef. But I also don't think that a chef should be stagnant and just get buried in the kitchen and not understand the scope
It sounds
of
like
the business.
Yeah, like the ceiling needs to be higher. We need to add more rungs to the ladder and climb higher.
Well, they're there.
Yeah.
The rungs are there.
We
We're
just
just
stop
allowing
climbing.
somebody else to occupy them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's what leads me back into real estate because for my progression, it has to be cook and cook well and cook better and then cook great. And then understand inventory and organization and then understand that well and then master that.
Yeah.
And then understand leadership and management and the same process, right? You have to get better at it. And if I can't manage myself, I can't manage the team. And so then I have to understand how to manage emotion and manage people's potential. And so then we break into that space. And then once I start to master those things, right, then I can master teaching people how to produce my ideas and replicate them on a day-to-day basis, teaching them how to start to seek out and realize their own dreams or their own dishes and their own ideas as it relates to food. And now we've got a team where I'm not the only contributor to the menu, and we're creating this culture where people are really digging into what the food is, the delivery of the food, how we get the food, right? And now the team is starting to get really complete.
Yeah.
And so then when that starts to happen, people want to grow. And as people start to replace themselves as cooks, as sous chefs, as chefs de cuisines, right? Then I need to, because they're pushing up, I need to keep pushing up.
Yeah.
And my pushing up space now moves me from chef to starting to understand what it's like to own. And then the natural progression to own is possibly, unless you got a lot of cash on hand, is to pay rent. And then I start to fully understand, right? Based on seeking out the information on what the restaurant I worked at paid for rent, the nuances, what things were beneficial in that space versus things that were cons in that space. And then I start to pay rent. And then at some point after paying rent, I probably need to own that building or own a building, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes landlords, after you build equity, won't even let you buy the place that you built the restaurant in.
Yeah.